All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get ourselves started. My name is Dr. Joanne Yanez. I'm the Executive Director for the AANMC, and today we are going to be speaking with Dr. Mickey Brawner. How does that sound?
It's pretty crazy, I'm not going to lie.
A recent graduate from Bastyr, who is the immediate past president of the Naturopathic Medical Student Association. And Dr. Brawner is going to be joining us to share tips and tricks from the naturopathic student's perspective. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to you. Just a couple housekeeping things before we get started. Everyone who is here is in listen only mode. If you do have any questions for myself or Emily from AANMC or Dr. Brawner, please go ahead and use the Q&A box of Zoom for any questions you may have. And if you have any technical issues, you can always email us at info@aanmc.org. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Brawner and make my face go away.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Yanez. And hello, everyone. I am speaking to you on my cell phone today because for whatever reason, I'm having technical difficulties. So bear with me if it looks like I'm looking everywhere. So I'm just going to go through some stuff that I served as, well, we'll go through what about me first. So my undergrad was at Northern Illinois University. I was a professional actor for several years before I eventually made the move into naturopathic medicine. Like most of you on the call, I had a personal life story that brought me to naturopathic medicine. I personally have MS, and I was able to overcome that through naturopathic medicine. So I went to Bastyr, Washington in Kenmore, graduated in June of this year and have completed my boards. It's very exciting. But extracurriculars, I live in the Pacific Northwest, so I love backpacking, hiking, lots of outdoor stuff, sports, things like that. So next slide, if you don't mind, Dr. Yanez. So basically what we're going to go through today, while I was at Bastyr, I also worked as an ambassador for the school. So I worked a lot in recruiting. I also worked with a lot of the students that were first-year students as a mentor, things like that. So most of what we're going to talk about today are the big questions and topics that came up with most of the students that were trying to get into med school and weren't being answered by the school. So if you have questions outside of this, just write them down and we'll get to them at the end. I'll get through this as quick as I can. The big things we're going to talk about: how to prepare, the things that you might be missing that maybe didn't even come up on your radar, housing concerns, where should you live, and what are your options on that. Let's see here, my screen just changed, sorry. Money stuff, that's a big one that scares a lot of people, and hopefully by the end of this, you won't be too scared about money. Life-school balance, that's a huge one, and one that I hope all of you really take to heart because that's a hard one. We'll break down the years, first, second, third, fourth. If you're on the 4-year track, it's a little bit different if you go onto a 5-year track. And then we'll take questions. So that being said, hope you get your pen and paper ready to write down questions, because I'm sure you're going to have a lot. So let's talk about how to prepare. First and foremost, the number one thing that gets a lot of students is you need to have the talk with anyone who's important to you. So what is the talk? The talk is the sit-down conversation where you sort of redefine what the dynamic of your relationship is going to look like. You know, I've seen a lot of relationships, even marriages, end in these programs. And that's not to scare you. It's more of a reality check. You're going to be doing 24 to 29 credit hours every single quarter. That's a lot. And it's med school classes, so it's very high level. So your typical day looks like maybe you wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning, get your personal care in, some breakfast, and then you're in classes from 8 until 5 o'clock at night, and then you're studying until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Point being that a lot of the relationships that you're currently in, you're just not going to have the same kind of time that you normally would. And it's very important that you have those conversations going into it so that everybody has the same expectation. big one is the third bullet point, establishing habits for success. So these are things that, they seem obvious, but they're things that you actually start to miss once you get in the program. A sleep routine, making sure that you're going to sleep at the same time every night and waking up at the same time. Exercise. It's really hard to squeeze in exercise when you're so busy, but it's so important. Diet is a big one. A lot of people don't eat, or they skip meals because they're so worried about classes that they forget about eating. And then the fourth point, stress management. So things that for you that help with your stress: walking in nature, yoga, exercising, going out and having a drink with your friends, whatever it is that calms you down and gets you away from schoolwork. You need to build that time in for yourself so that you're not always focused on schoolwork. You have to take those breaks. Next point, you need to change your mindset in terms of school. Most of us, when we get in this program, we're type A personalities. We're used to succeeding and taking on massive amounts of things and being best at everything. That's not going to happen anymore. And again, not to scare you, but there's going to be times you're going to feel overwhelmed and you're going to fail at things, whether it's a test, a quiz, an assignment, something, maybe even a class. That's okay. And you have to let yourself be okay with failure once in a while, because we all do it. And all that is an opportunity to dig in deeper to something that maybe you didn't get fully the first time because of time. And then the last one, this is something I sort of created working with a lot of the students at Bastyr. It's creating a lockbox in your mind. So when you think about what brought you to Naturopathic Medical School, we all have a story. And it's a very powerful story that really drove us into this medicine. That's what you need to keep and hold on to, because as you go through this program, you're going to lose sight of that. You're going to get stressed out. You're going to have so much stress and obstacles in front of you that it's very easy to forget what brought you here. And I've seen people quit because of it. So create a lockbox in your mind. Build a little box and put all of those things inside of it, close it, and lock it. So when you get to those moments where you're sitting on the floor outside of Gross Lab crying because you had a tough day, open that box and remind yourself why you're doing this. And I know it sounds crazy, it's weird, but it really does help. It makes a big difference. And the people that are able to do this effectively end up sticking around longer in the program and tend to do better. So let's go to the next one with housing. These are some key things that get a lot of people. The most important one on here is be close to campus. You do not want to be traveling 30, 40, 50 minutes to get to and from school every day, because that time adds up and all of a sudden you're losing time to study or to spend time on yourself, things like that. And it adds more stress to you. You want to have access to a washer and dryer on site. Not all apartments have that. So you have to go to a laundromat, which is more time out of your day. So if you can find a house that's close to campus with a washer and dryer, you're doing good. You also want to make sure you have good internet connection. Not all apartments offer that. And a lot of classes, especially if there's a winter storm or sickness, are going to be online. And it's very important that you have good access to the internet. Another one is transportation. Some cities you can get around without a car. I know here in Kenmore, it's almost impossible to navigate life without a car because the bus system's just not that good. So make sure you have a good means of transportation or friends that can get you where you need to go. If living on campus is an option, that's a really, really good option. And I highly recommend it at least the first year. It's usually less expensive. You're right on campus and you'll get to make friends the first year. So then you can get into a different housing situation that might even be better than trying to rent by yourself. You want to have a good space to study in the house. If it's a studio apartment, that's going to be hard. If you live with roommates, that's also going to be hard. So you want to have a room or some space set aside so that you can actually study without interruption. And you want to be able to lay out resources. A lot of times when I'm studying, I'll have 5 or 6 books out easily and a dry erase board to go through concepts and things. And then personal space where you're alone, that's pretty self-explanatory. I think you want to be able to study in a room where you don't have roommates playing video games in the background, cooking dinner, whatnot. And then, sort of create your own personal utopia. What I mean by that is when you're studying, yes, you can study in a completely white room with a desk and a chair and all your books, and you'll probably do fine. I find that if I have certain pieces in the room that are kind of relaxing for me, or certain plants or pictures or certain items that are calming to me, certain crystals or things like that my wife has bought me, things like that actually help your study and will take away little pieces of that stress and help you get through this. This is really hard talking on a phone because I can't see anybody, just so you know. All right, now comes the money stuff. Next slide. All right, this is the one that when you're coming into this program, there's a few different types of individuals. Some of you aren't gonna have to worry about this because your parents are gonna be able to afford this for you. Most of us can't. So you have a few options here. I don't want anyone to stress about money because I've seen a lot of people just stress about the amounts of student loans and they start freaking out and it's a whole nother level of stress. There's money there. I'll say that. You don't have to worry about the money. You can get the money. Work with your financial aid department. They have various loans, Stafford, Direct Plus. There are grants, there are scholarships. Some are by the school, some are private. And you can also work if you want to. Let's talk about loans first. It's a lot of people here that you're going to take on, and this is a reality check here, but you're going to take on close to $400,000 in debt if you're on 100% loans in this program. I know that's a terrifying number. Don't worry about that number right now. There are options when you get out. One of the options, the one that I'm using, is a income-based repayment. So it's only a percentage of how much money you're making that goes back towards student loans. After 25 years, if you don't miss a payment, they actually will get rid of all of your principal balance. You just pay the interest at that point, which I've talked with a couple of doctors that have gone through that process, and it's actually not as bad as they thought it was going to be. So that's a positive. When you think about it though, the difference between $200,000 and $300,000 of student loan debt, if you're on an income-based repayment plan, you're probably going to be paying the exact same amount because it's based on your income, not your total debt at that point. Where the difference is going to come in is the interest on the back end. So you make your payments based on income for 25 years. And then on the back end, after 25 years, you're paying the interest. There's more interest on more money. But again, after 25 years, it's not as much as you think it might be. That's just one repayment option. You want to talk to your financial aid department because there's a lot of options. In terms of work is one of those things that, yes, you can do it when you're in the program. I know people that have done it. I know people that work full time throughout the program. My personal recommendation is if you can avoid working an outside job, do it. It's a lot to go through this program, and when you're working several hours outside of it, it feels like you're suffocating and drowning. A better option, rather than working offsite for me, is getting work-study jobs. Work-study jobs are great because they tend to pay, $15, $16 an hour, not great, but they work with your school schedule and are very, very sensitive to the fact that you're in this program. So you can go work for an hour, go to class, come back, work another half hour to an hour if you want, go back to class, or you cannot work at all. But in terms of money, don't stress yourself out about money. There's plenty of other stuff to stress about in this program, and it's more important that you have the money you need so you can eat, buy the things you need, get the equipment you need, and still take breaks and do things with your friends to help work on that life school balance sort of thing. I'm sure there's going to be questions about this at the end. so we can come back to this, and any questions you have, I'm happy to answer them. But definitely get to know your financial aid department. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so life-school balance. I'm going to solve the mystery for you right now. There are going to be ups and downs. We used to, my cohort we used to laugh and say that if you make it through your first quarter and you haven't cried somewhere on the ground, you did it wrong. And it's so true. The program is enough on its own because the amount of work that you're putting in, the material that's just coming at you nonstop. It's like a freight train that you're trying to like stop with your little arms. But there's also life too, and we forget about that. So when you start adding on all the little life things, someone important, you might get sick when you're in the program. My father passed away in the program, and it was another thing that I had to go through and deal with that just sort of adds to the stress. Because of this, you need to make sure you have a work-life balance. So, set up a study routine. For me, I did 1 hour on, 20 minutes off, and without question, no exceptions. It was always 1 hour on, 20 minutes off. I also always took Sundays off. If I had an exam on Monday, I wouldn't study Sunday. I always gave myself 1 day of the week that was just for me and my wife. Set hard times for yourself. When you're going to wake up, when you're going to go to sleep, when are you exercising? More important than any of them, when are you not studying? And that's one that's really hard for type A personalities to do. You have to set times for yourself when you are absolutely not studying for any reason. Clubs. All of the schools have different clubs. I ran some of the meditation club at Bastyr. I was on the ping pong club. So many different clubs. There's tons of things to do that connect you with different people in the school. And it's also one of the few opportunities you'll have if you're a first year to get to know the third and fourth year students, because you don't see them very often. They're usually in clinic in your last 2 years. So this is a good opportunity through clubs to get to know upperclassmen and get tips and tricks from them. Organizations. There are a ton of opportunities for you as a naturopathic student. One of them is the Naturopathic Medical Student Association. I am the outgoing president, so this is actually the last week that I will be the president of the NMSA. There is Student Council, which is, I don't know why I put SG, it should have been SC. I think I just hit the wrong button, but it's Student Council or Student Government. Maybe that's why I put a G. ANR is the Association of Naturopathic Revitalization. I was actually one of the main leaders in that and put on a retreat every year at Bastyr called Revival. We have 3 different events that happen at different campuses throughout the year, but we're trying to grow that into different schools. The point being here is that there are a lot of organizations that you can get involved in that will help you down the road. But again, they take up a lot of time. And you have to be able to balance those things. So it's very important that you get to know yourself and maybe wait until you're in your second quarter or second semester before you start picking what clubs and organizations you want to join, so you have a better feel of how you're going to do in this type of program. Time in nature. That is a lot of what we do as naturopathic doctors. Nature is so important, and I see it all the time. Bastyr, Washington, if you're not familiar with the campus, it is located in the middle of a forest. It's beautiful. And I actually know people in this program that never went outside and walked around in the forest because they were so busy with school. Like, definitely want to get time in nature because it's going to help you in so many ways. It helps ground you. It calms you. And in a way, it reminds you why we're doing this medicine, because there's so much healing power in nature. There really is. Study groups. This is a huge one. You cannot get through this program on your own. You just can't do it. People try, and they always end up in a study group at some point. The thing with study groups, as the years go on, your cohort will sort of divide, and some people will go on to a 5 or a 6-year track, or they'll add on a second major and go to a dual track. In the first year, your cohort's all together. When you get to second, third, and fourth year, you start dividing up and you see very few of the people that you used to see in the first year. So you want to form study groups with people that are on a similar track as you, have similar thinking as you in terms of how they want to study, but maybe have different strengths in terms of what they're good at, whether it's physiology, anatomy, histology, embryology, anything like that. But the most important part of this is you have to be willing to change your study group up. I was in a study group my first year, and it just wasn't working. We had a couple people in there that, for whatever reason, just changed the dynamic, and we weren't getting anything done. So we changed the study group and did fantastic from that point forward. The problem was that we started probably with 6 or 7 people, and it's just too many in a study group. We moved it down to 4, and all of a sudden we were able to actually make headway and figure things out. And it saved me in this program. It really did. The other thing is that each year is going to be different. So the way you approach each year strategically has to be different based on what the year is doing. So next slide. This is a breakdown of the schools of the years. Now this is based on, I went to Bastyr, Washington. This is a 4-year track that I broke down. If you go to a 5-year track or add a dual degree, this changes. This is just a generic breakdown of the 4-year track and what you're looking at. So in year 1, it's basic science. And all of the programs, for the most part, follow the same curriculum. There are little variances in what the class is called or what you're doing, but for the most part, this is what the program looks like. So year 1, basic science, phys med, things like that. You're going to learn how to study this year, because everything you think you know about studying is going to change. This is a whole different beast that you're taking on. But you're also going to find that in year 1, you have what are called gatekeeper classes. Gatekeeper classes are classes that if you do not pass this class, you cannot move forward in the program. An example, at Bastyr, Washington, we have a class called Integrated Structure and Function. If you do not pass that class, you have to retake it the following year, which means that you cannot move forward in your basic science classes until you pass that class, because it's a foundation for everything you're going to learn moving forward. There are a couple of those classes that come up throughout first year. That's the one that tends to get a lot of people at our program, is Integrated Structure and Function, because it's so much more than you're used to having in a class, and it's a very difficult material. Also, first year, you have so many exams. It is like a year of exams. It feels like every other week you have an exam, and you're always preparing for a test that's like tomorrow. Just hold on, you'll get through it. But know that that's what you're getting into. First year is just a lot of information and a lot of testing. A lot of people say that that's the hardest year for them. And it's the year that I've seen a lot of people fail ISF and go into a 5-year track. For our program, and I don't know how true this is for all programs, but at Bastyr, Washington, you have the option to do a summer start. I know it's a little bit different in Chicago and some of the other schools, how it's set up. For us, you can do a summer start at Bastyr. The benefit of a summer start is you can take ISF in the summer, and then if you fail it in the summer, you can now take it in the fall. And if you pass it in the fall, you're still right on track. So it's almost like a safety net that's built in. Summer start also will help you sort of get your toes wet before you jump in the water, so that you can kind of ease your way into the water. A lot of people choose to take that summer off so that they can have one last summer to sort of travel and do what they want before they jump in. Huge benefit. They come in fully ready to go. Problem is, now they're taking ISF and the full load all at once. So it's 28 credit hours, I believe, the first quarter. Now, if you don't pass ISF, by default, you have to go on a 5-year track because you can't take it again until the next summer. So there's pros and cons to both. I did summer start and I was glad I did. If you ask anyone who did fall start, they're all glad they did. So you just have to know yourself and figure out what you want to do. All right, so year two, this is where things change a little bit. Year two is kind of like a year of what I call check boxes. There are tons of assignments and tiny little quiz things, and it just feels like it's an enormous number of check boxes that you're constantly having to make sure you're doing, and it's easy to forget things. And second year is so important to have a small study group that can keep each other accountable for what you're doing. Sort of divide and conquer on assignments and say, you handle this part of it, I'll handle this part of it, and then we'll all come together and talk. Year two is going to start your pathology, immunology, diagnostic exams, bot med, phys med, again, nutrition, mental health, all of that kind of stuff. You also, at the end of second year, have the option to take the NCLEX 1, which is the first part of your board exams. It covers all of your basic science through the first 2 years. It's a one-day test for NCLEX 1, I believe, and it's a pretty stress-inducing test, and everyone's freaking out about it, but everybody gets through it. You'll do it. The good news with NCLEX 1 is if you don't pass it in the summer, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change your life. You can take it again the next year, and even again after your fourth year if you want. The thing with NCLEX is you have to pass both NCLEX 1 and NCLEX 2 to be a licensed physician. So I would recommend taking NCLEX 1 right after second year when the basic information is like the basic science is still very fresh in your head, because by fourth year, a lot of that stuff is kind of gone because it's filled with other information. And same as first year, some people would say this is the hardest year. Most people would say first or second year, one of those two is the hardest year for them. Almost everybody. By the end of second year, I'd say probably half your cohort is probably going to be on either a dual track or a 5-year track because they failed something. And that's just the nature of this. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So year 3, this is where you start to take a little bit of a deeper dive into things. So you'll start going into, your classes will be system by system at that point. And you'll dig into, say, cardiovascular, and you'll go through all of the pathologies that can happen in cardiovascular, as well as the drugs, the herbs, the other complementary modalities that we use, different ways that you can use to treat them after you've diagnosed it. So this is when you really start getting into the therapeutics. It's also when you start doing your non-observation clinical hours. So you'll be a secondary in clinic in third year, which means that you're typically the one who is supporting the primary, who's running the visit, doing the intake, asking the questions, and you're there for support to take vitals and to do anything else that the primary needs of you. It's a great learning experience, and it's where you actually learn all the things you need to know so that when you go into fourth year, you can actually be a clinician. The great news about year 3 is you have way fewer tests. So that's a positive, but the tests are also more in depth because they're very specific to a particular system. So the questions tend to dive really, really deep into the intricacies of the drugs, the pathologies, you name it. And again, some say this is the hardest year. You see the pattern, right? It's the program's different for everybody, and everybody trips up at some point and is like, wow, this is the hardest thing I've done the whole time I'm here. Year 4, I personally loved year 4. That was my favorite year by far, because now you're a primary clinician. Now you're doing 4 shifts for us quarters. So it's 4 shifts every quarter. And the lion's share of what you're doing is seeing patients, working on treatment plans, and living in clinic. You exist in clinic, that's it. There's very few exams. I think we had a total of 4 exams in the fourth year here, something like that. I could be wrong. The scary part of fourth year, there's 2 things that happen in fourth year. One is your exit exam from clinic, which is where they set up mock patients, and you go to 4 different rooms, and you see the patient. There's a proctor in the room, and you go through a patient encounter, and they're grading you on how you do this. And you have to pass that exam to graduate and exit clinic. It's the exit exam. The other thing is, after 4th year ends, you'll graduate, you'll party, you'll do all those things. Then you have the NPLEX 2. The NPLEX 2, the easiest way to describe the NPLEX 2 is it's terrible. It's absolutely a horrible test. So you'll get through it. We all do, but it's one of those tests that everybody walks out and no one feels good about it. And you're just like, what was that? What am I doing with my life? But you'll get through it. Everybody does. You'll also be completing 3rd and 4th, anytime throughout the 4 years, but really it's 3rd and 4th year. You'll be doing preceptorship hours, clinic competencies, and a lot of other stuff that's basically geared towards getting you ready to be a clinician. All right, so that's the breakdown of the years. The biggest message, if you take nothing else away from this whole talk today, take this slide away with you. Be gentle on yourself. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It's okay to fail. We all do. You are going to fail at some point, and that's okay. Take breaks, make memories, pay attention to what's happening, because you will get through this. We all do. And lean on the people ahead of you and your cohort, because they're going to get you through a lot of things in this program. All right, so next slide, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions coming. This is sort of what I love. I've thought about this long and hard for all 4 years going through the program. And what I've come to is that the reason I love naturopathic medicine is the only medicine I know of that's exactly what you need it to be, whether you're a patient, a practitioner. It actually heals both of us. And when you live this medicine as a practitioner, you actually show up in a different way for your patients, and it makes you a better person. It makes them a better patient. And it's always changing. So whatever your unique gifts are, or your perspective and point of view, there's a place for it in this medicine, and we need you. This 4 years that you're about to go through is literally a dogfight that serves one purpose. It gives you the tools you need so that when you graduate, you can go out and learn how to be a doctor and bring your gifts to the world and start healing patients. So if nothing else, just remember, be gentle on yourself and know that you're joining a profession that is so profound and offers so much to so many people that you're going to make a huge change in this world. And on the next slide, I have my contact information. That is my actual personal contact information that you can reach out anytime you want to. I'm happy to answer questions. I start residency on September 12th. So basically from now until then, I have nothing but time. After that, I don't know what it's going to look like. And that is the line. That's basically what I have. It's just a question of questions now.
Excellent. Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Brawner. We'll get to questions in just a moment. I just want to take this chance to share our next events before we get to the questions. So we will be hosting naturopathic dermatology with Dr. Greenberg, approaches to autoimmunity with Dr. Jaquel Patterson, and we will have naturopathic residency week for current students, October 31st through November 5th. We're also going to be hosting our biannual naturopathic virtual fair in November as well. So lots to come. Hope to see you at an event soon. And so, and I'll post the ANMC contact information here as well if anyone has any additional questions for us. So with that, Dr. Brawner, I'm going to take a few questions. Can you share your process on deciding to go to Bastyr? What things were important to you in making that decision?
Yeah, well, my decision for once I decided I was going to naturopathic medical school, Bastyr was actually an easy choice for me. I lived here. My wife had lived here for a long time, and kind of told me this is the one you're going to go to if you go. So that actually made my decision very easy. But deciding to go to naturopathic medical school in the first place, like most of you on the call, I developed MS. But not that most of you have MS, but it was a medical obstacle that I had that, I was struggling. I was on a cane at one point, long story. I was very debilitated, and naturopathic medicine brought me back. And I've been symptom-free, drug-free, relapse-free for 10 years now, and I rock climb regularly. And I wanted to share that with the world and help other patients that were struggling. And that's essentially what brought me here. Bastyr was an easy choice, though, because my wife made that choice.
Let me unmute myself there. Any tips for getting through naturopathic medical school married? I know you talked about having a day that you spend with your spouse or significant other, but can you share a little bit about that? Because it's obviously a very intensive, time-intensive thing that can be stressful on relationships.
Absolutely. And I will start by saying I have actually watched multiple marriages dissolve in this program, 100%. The reason it usually happens is that the student is so focused on this insane program that you're going through and like just the work that you're doing that you don't have the time to put in. That's why I said have the talk. To change and be on the same page with what the expectation is. The partner, more often than not, feels like they're forgotten about or not cared about or aren't getting any attention. So what I did for myself, because my wife is my best friend, always has been, the best support I've ever had. So I always set aside one day of the week, which was Sunday, where I did absolutely nothing. My wife and I, it was our day, no matter what was going on, for us to go out to dinner, for us to go take a hike, for us to go to the lake, anything. But my focus on Sundays was only her. I didn't even talk about school. I also put reminders in my phone that go off every 2 weeks that say, love your wife the way she deserves. And then I got her an honorary degree at the end that said, like, for supporting me throughout this program. But if you're married, just remember that you're not the only one going through this program. Your spouse is also going through this program. And you have to recognize that, because the stress you feel, they feel it too. So just taking that time.
Thank you. I have a question here from a student who is sharing about neurodiversity, and they're curious if you have any resources for students who may learn differently or have some accommodations. If not, I can connect them to some of the resources at schools.
Yeah, that might be a better option, because in all honesty, I feel like everybody who goes through this program has some sort of it feels like everybody has difficulty learning when you're going through this program because there's so much information. I don't know any specific resources for that, though.
No worries. Thank you. Can you share why you're choosing to do residency?
Yes. That's an easy answer for me, because I don't feel like any single student is ever ready to be a primary care doctor the day you walk out of school. You're just not. School does not teach you how to be a doctor. School teaches you the things you need to know to be a doctor, but it does not teach you how to be a doctor. So for me, and this is an opinion, 100% opinion, I felt like for myself, it would be irresponsible to walk out of school and just open my own clinic and say, great, I'm going to start seeing all manner of complicated primary care conditions based on what I learned out of a book in school. So for me, it's about getting doctors that have been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years to help put that knowledge into me that you didn't learn in school. Like, how do you manage a case? Why would I choose this option versus this option? Because all I know from school is they're both options. And it's, I worked with a gentleman named Dr. Dean Neary. He was one of my preceptors, a very dear friend of mine now. And I learned things. He had a patient walk in that had severe PTSD, like beyond anything I've ever seen. Anything I've ever seen. If a door closed too hard, he would jump onto the ceiling. And I learned in 5 minutes how to make a connection with someone like that in a way I've never even seen before. And it's because I was with a doctor that knew what they were doing. And I wouldn't have done it the right way if I had been on my own. So that's where residency helps, is it trains you as a doctor, not as a student. And I think gives you a much better opportunity to learn how to manage patient care, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much. So there are a couple questions here that I'll kind of chip away at myself. I know that, this might not apply to you directly, but for older learners, for folks who are second career, coming back, non-traditional type students, any tips for overcoming some of those challenges? Yes, I know you're pointing to yourself, but any tips for non-trads, for older students, adult learners, etc.
Yeah, so I'm actually I turned 45 next week. For anyone who didn't know, this is actually my second or third career. It's if it is your second, third career and you haven't been in school for a while, that's going to be the big one. That's what really kind of like shocked me a little bit, is that learning is very different than it was when I originally went through undergrad. Everything's computerized and there's programs and things you're just supposed to know that I didn't know. So it was a learning curve on how to learn in today's like universities. It was weird. I don't know how to explain it. It was just weird. It was very different. I would encourage you to find someone who resonates with you in your program that's either a similar age or has very similar interests, because it's hard when you're 40 years old to walk in with 22-year-olds and just have a great relationship and join a study group. It's hard. So you almost have to go above and beyond and put a little bit more effort into bridging that gap, because you also bring a lot of maturity and experience that they don't necessarily have exposure to yet. So in a way you're kind of like a mentor, but you're also learning from them. They're going to teach you how to learn and exist in today's college as a student, and you're going to help them overcome certain things like, hey, you know what, you didn't pass that quiz, but it's really not that big of a deal. It's really just learning yourself is the big thing. For me, I had a strong support at home with my wife, but I just did whatever I could to connect with as many younger students as I could. And, that usually for me meant just following their interests. And then when we found mutual interests, jumping in with the things that I know. But it's like anything in life. It's just, building relationships with other people and knowing that you're sort of the person that's a little different than everyone else because you're a little older, and building those relationships. I mean,
Thank you so much. Gosh, there are a lot of questions coming in here. I'm trying to make sure I get to as many as we can. So let's see. So for the folks asking about working, Dr. Brawner did talk about working. Working really is very dependent on the student, depends on the part of the program that you're in, your study style. I as a former faculty, both at ND school and nursing school, I've always told students, you need to know how you study, how you learn, get that down before you get to ND school. There isn't time to figure it out once you're in the program. And even with the study groups that you talked about, like sometimes study groups work, sometimes they don't. I think I heard, the neurodivergence folks, people who have trouble with attention and focusing may have a very hard time with multiple people around. So, it's really just really knowing how you learn, how you retain information the fastest and the most efficient way. And so let's see. Oh gosh, I'm trying to scan through these. what is your best advice regarding applications and application to naturopathic school? So being a strong applicant.
So, and again, this is based on my experience and what I know from working with the recruiting department. It's when you're applying to naturopathic medical, they have the basic requirements, things you have to hit this, this, and this. Obviously, that needs to be in place. What they're looking for is the person, not the record per se. Obviously, you need to pass those classes, but what they want to know is, who are you? Why do you want to do this medicine? And what are you bringing into this medicine? Talk about things about yourself that aren't about medicine. Like, they want to know who you are. It's like any interview. Know who you are, go in, talk about who you are, and be confident in yourself. So when I actually, great example, the chief medical officer of our clinic, Dr. Wallace, was one of my interviewers on interview day. And he asked me how I failed yoga in undergrad. Because I failed a yoga class. And he flat out just asked me, he said, "How did you fail yoga?" That was my response. I laughed. I just started laughing, and then he started laughing, and then the other two people in the room started laughing. And yeah, I think my answer was that, yeah, I just didn't go to class very often because I was too busy, which is probably not a great answer because I'm interviewing for a program, but they're not in there to tear apart your records and your undergraduate history and your school history. They want to know who you are. That's it. They just want to know who you are and why you want to do naturopathic medicine. So know yourself and be ready to talk about that.
Very good. Can you talk a little bit about, and I know that you have residency lined up, maybe some of the things that you've seen your colleagues regarding, I know you talked about money being a concern, and jobs and employment is also often a question that we get. So can you talk a little bit about, some of the things that you've seen successful students do to walk across, get your diploma, and have your next steps lined up?
Yeah, so you need to start networking early on in your career, in your school program. So when I say early on, I mean by second year, I think you should start doing some sort of preceptorships. And what I've seen very successful people do in this program that lined up work after the program for themselves is they found a preceptorship with a doctor that they really resonated with, that does the type of work they want to do. And they stayed on. They just talked to the doctor, and the doctor kept them on, maybe gave them a paid position at the front desk where they were working as a clerk or an assistant doing different things. They built the relationships with these doctors. And before they even graduated, they already had offers to come work in their clinic as either a resident, like a non-official resident, or an actual doctor. I mean, there are a lot of opportunities, but it's building relationships. You can join one of the organizations from before, NMSA, ANR, any of those, or you can just do a ton of preceptorships. The big thing, though, is just not sitting at home and only doing your schoolwork. You have to go out and make those connections. Go to the conference every year, meet doctors, start talking to people. Every time you have a conversation, you're representing yourself and you're setting up possible future opportunities. And that's the big thing. Everyone who's successful coming out spent the last 4 years of their life always being on when they were in a room and other people were there. They were always ready to talk and build themselves up. And that's sort of creating those opportunities.
Thank you. So we're just going to take a little bit more here because we are going to have to wrap up in a moment, but can you let's see, there are a couple folks who have asked if you, and some people don't, this is a question, if you considered conventional medicine in addition to naturopathic medicine. Not everybody does those. Some people are very, like Dr. Brawner said, they've had health concerns where their health concern was treated or managed by naturopathic medicine. And so it isn't even a thought to go into conventional model, but was that something that you were considering when you were looking into your next steps?
That's a funny question, in the sense that I've considered regular medical school 2 different times. Once I was supposed to do it when I was in junior high trans going into high school. I was doing a program, I was doing college and high school classes at the same time. And I was supposed to go into med school and I said, I don't want to be a doctor. So I went and became an actor instead. When I was going through this program, actually in my 3rd year, I started the application process to go to MD school as well. Because at that time, I felt like my interest was starting to sort of veer away from naturopathic medicine into things like surgery and things that you can't do as a naturopath. So I considered it. I went through the whole process and did all the workup to get into medical school, and then realized I just didn't really want to go through another 12 years of schooling to do surgery, because I was actually happy doing the naturopathic medicine and helping people that way. But yeah, I've considered it. This resonates more with me. It's how I've personally found success. I know so many people that have found success in naturopathic medicine. And it's just kind of a personal choice. You'll know when you know. I had someone who did leave the program to join an MD program and are graduating next year. Great friends with them still. It just depends on what you want to do.
Exactly. So with that, we're going to close the webinar. I think that what you've shared today has been so very valuable. And on your last point of, there is no one right way for anybody to practice or choose healthcare, but there is a right way for you. And so I think, it really does boil down to knowing yourself, knowing your career, seeing education as an investment in yourself and your life and your career, and aligning the best way to get you to where you need to be. And so with that, I thank you so very much, Dr. Brawner. I wish you a wonderful day, and thank you all, the audience, for coming and joining us. And I hope to see you at another event not too far in the future. So with that, we will wrap up, and best wishes on your residency, Dr. Brawner. I wish you nothing but the best, and please check in from time to time. I can't wait to hear you doing great things.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Yanez. Sorry about the shaky hand. It's all on cell phone.
All good. Thanks so much, folks, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye-bye.